The shrieks echo through the darkness. High-pitched warbles and uncanny laughter amplify against limestone walls, cutting through the sound of monsoon rain pouring outside. It's 400,000 years ago, a few miles from what will one day be Beijing, inside Jokudian, Dragon Bone Cave, a group of Homo erectus huddles in the shadows. They've claimed this cave as their own. They are masters of their world. They've survived ice ages, mastered fire, crafted stone tools. They walk upright. Their brains are roughly the size of yours. They are accomplished, enterprising. They are by every measure one of our most successful predecessors. But tonight, none of that matters. One of them, a young male, sleeps near the cave entrance. He's positioned himself there deliberately, closer to fresh air, away from the smoke of the dying fire, deeper in the cave. His chest rises and falls in the rhythm of deep sleep. Around him, fragments of their last meal, deer bones, cracked open for marrow, stone tools, carefully napped, rest within arm's reach. The laughter grows closer, different from the sounds they make. Shriller, more frenzied, massive paws pad against wet stone. In the darkness, eyes reflect the dying embers of the fire. Pachycrocuta brevirostris, the giant short-faced hyena, nearly 1.5 meters tall at the shoulder, weighing as much as a modern lion, jaws capable of crushing bone like breadsticks. This hyena is a deadly predator throughout the Pleistocene, and much like its modern cousins, Pachycrocuta is more than capable of consuming bones whole. The Homo erectus wakes. His eyes snap open. He sees the silhouette. Too late. Teeth close around his skull. The crunch is immediate, sickening. His face is ripped away first. Hyenas go for the brain, rich in energy-dense fat. The skullcap shatters under pressure that would bend steel. Then the limbs. Massive jaws snap long bones like twigs. The marrow inside, fatty, nutritious, is the prize. Hyenas often swallow bone completely in their haste to access it. The consumption of bone has an unusual side effect. Their waste is completely white, full of excess calcium. By morning, only fragments remain, scattered across the cave floor in a pattern that will be preserved for 400,000 years, long bone shards bearing deep pits and scratches, 5 skull caps among the debris, but not a single face. The faces were ripped off to access the brains. The pattern is unmistakable to modern researchers. At first, these marks were interpreted as signs of cannibalism. After all, brains are full of energy-rich fat. The shattered limbs are consistent with something trying to access bone marrow. But slowly, researchers realized that these marks weren't the clean slices of stone knives. These marks were made by teeth. Teeth capable of crunching through bone, of ripping off faces. These were the marks made by Pachycrocuta brevirostris. This wasn't murder, this was dinner, and Jokudian is not alone. Across Eurasia, this story repeats. In most cases, our ancestors didn't win. Caves were more likely to ring loudly with the shrill cackles of hyena packs than with the triumphant laughter of hominins. Though hominins are found at this site from 700,000 years ago to 230,000 years ago, their bones are more homage to the incredible power and ferocity of ancestral hyenas than to the resourcefulness of our ancestors. For 2 million years, we were prey. The bones of over 40 Homo erectus individuals were laid to rest in this cave, but they don't record triumph. They record something we've forgotten, something we've chosen not to remember. For most of human history, we were just as likely to be prey as predator. So how exactly did our ancestors move up the food chain? Who attempted to stop us as we climbed? It has not always been an easy journey, and there have been surprising missteps along the way. 150 years ago, a 9-year-old boy named John Wade walked the streets of London near the Thames docks. It was a busy day. Ships from the East Indies had just arrived, and dock hands were unloading their curious cargo. Today's delivery was more interesting than most. A full-grown Bengal tiger in a wooden crate. Like many passers-by, John watched with great curiosity as the tiger was unloaded and moved toward its new home. An iron bar cage in Charles Jamrach's menagerie. The tiger, however, was not so complacent. As the animal was being guided into its cage, it pushed violently with its back legs and succeeded in dislodging the crate just enough to slide through the gap. It dashed out of the menagerie and into the yard. For John, it was too great an opportunity to miss. He reached out to pet the tiger. The 200-kilogram cat whipped around. Before John could pull back, massive teeth closed around his head. The tiger began to drag him down the street. It's all too easy to lose our sense of danger when we think of ourselves as masters of the world around us. But we too are part of the food chain, and our roles can be reversed far faster than we expect. Young John Wade was lucky. The menagerie owner raced out into the street and beat the tiger across the head with a crowbar until it released the boy. He survived, though not unmarked. His father reported that even once the bite marks had healed, John continued to suffer nightmares. He gained a reputation for biting children at school. Other tiger victims have not been so fortunate. Nearly 400,000 people died from tiger attacks between 1800 and 2009 in Southeast Asia alone. Even today, tigers in the Sundarbans between India and Bangladesh kill 50 to 60 people per year. Even a single tiger can do incredible damage, like the Champawat tiger, which killed over 400 people over 4 years in the early 1900s in Nepal and India. So while we may be at the top of the food chain, that doesn't mean we don't still share that position with others. But here's what most people don't understand. Predation itself created us. Not metaphorically, literally. 3 billion years ago, an ancestral cell was hunting. It engulfed another cell, attempting to digest it for energy, but something went wrong. The predation failed. The consumed cell survived inside its attacker, and over millions of years, that failed predation became symbiosis. That consumed cell became our mitochondria, the structures that power every cell in your body right now. Every breath you take, every thought you have, every movement you make, powered by an ancient act of failed predation. Predation didn't just shape our evolution. It created the very machinery that makes complex life possible. It created us. But for most of our existence as primates, we weren't the ones doing the eating. We were the ones being eaten. 55 million years ago, in the sweltering jungles of what will one day be Wyoming, an ancient primate hunts for food. Carpolestes is on the small side, less than 200 grams, with a long face and surprisingly small eyes positioned more on the side of its head than on the front. It looks a bit like a tree shrew, but despite this, Carpolestes is indeed an ancestral primate. One key similarity, it uses opposable toes to hang onto branches. But whereas today's primates use their sight to locate food, this ancient predecessor relies almost entirely on its sense of smell. It's not exactly easy. The smell of flowers and ripening fruit forms a cloying, odorous cloud. The world is a hothouse climate, about to reach its peak in a temperature spike known as the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. With unusually high levels of carbon dioxide, rainforests have reached up into the Arctic, and this expanded climate has given one particular group of plants the chance to flourish. Flowering plants. Their sudden rise to dominance means that any animal capable of specializing on them becomes similarly successful. The small eyes of Carpolestes may not be particularly good at seeing distant fruit, but its nose is certainly capable of detecting that ripening scent from a distance. Grasping feet give it the skill needed to climb, and its low-crowned molars are fit to crush through soft fruit. The fruit doesn't mind this seeming sacrifice. Primates are excellent at dispersing plant seeds. Carpolestes gets an energy-rich meal. The plant gets to send its seeds to a new location. A win-win. The evolution of fruits and flowers was incredibly important for our primate ancestors. It offered a new and abundant food source with lots of sugar and thus lots of energy. While all animals work to find foods that can fuel their bodies, primates have higher energy requirements than most, in part because of our larger brains. There are two other relatively abundant components of the primate diet: insects and leaves. But each has its problems. Leaves resist digestion, full of complex molecules like cellulose. Small primates cannot eat enough leaves to survive on them. Meanwhile, larger primates struggle to catch enough insects to use them as a viable food source. This trade-off is known as K's threshold, and it trapped primates in a difficult evolutionary position for millions of years. But fruit provided one alternative route. It doesn't need to be fermented, so it's easy for small primates to digest. During the right season, it's abundant enough for large primates too. However, this greenhouse climate could only last so long, and with changing climates came changing diets. Jump forward to 2 million years ago. Tanzania, Olduvai Gorge, Homo habilis makes tools, stone choppers sharp enough to cut through meat. These tools are sophisticated, useful, revolutionary. But here's the thing. They were kitchen tools, not hunting tools. The edges could slice meat, the tips could crack bones, but they weren't weapons, they weren't spears or clubs or anything designed to kill. It seems our ancestors learned how to process meat long before they learned how to catch it. Instead, Homo habilis and other early hominins were likely scavenging their food. And scavenging from the true predators of Africa, that was dangerous business. Southern Spain, 300,000 years ago. The carcass of Mammuthus meridionalis, the southern mammoth, lies still in an open grassland. Analysis of the bones suggests this mammoth died of natural causes. Its teeth were so worn as to be incapable of eating, a common cause of death in modern elephants. But while the animal's death was not dramatic, the fight over its carcass certainly was. A group of hominins arrives first on the scene. They've tracked the smell for miles. Stone tools in hand, they approach cautiously. The mammoth is massive, far too large to move, but they don't need to move it. They need the bones. Sharp-edged choppers crack through joints. The smell of bone marrow fills the air. Fatty, rich, absolutely worth the effort. They work quickly, methodically. They know they're not alone. In the distance, the warning signs appear. White feces scattered across the landscape, chalky with excess calcium. The calling card of hyenas. Bones are their specialty too, and hyenas don't share. The laughter starts, that distinctive, unsettling cackle that echoes across the grassland. Shapes appear on the horizon, massive, muscular bodies loping toward them. Giant, short-faced hyenas moving with deadly purpose. The hominins make a split-second decision. They grab the legs, portable, full of marrow, easy to carry, and run. It's not a victory, it's survival. It's taking what you can and getting out before the real predators arrive. This is the reality of scavenging. Taking food from predators is incredibly dangerous, but taking bones, that's a different story. Few animals have the capacity or energy to break open bones to access fatty marrow. Hyenas have been one of the few whose teeth and jaws are strong enough to do so. This meant that uncracked bones were fairly accessible and ready for harvesting. Indeed, humans today still show certain adaptations for this scavenging lifestyle. After all, scavenging comes with many dangers, including food poisoning, and so human stomachs have evolved an incredibly low and acidic pH. Acidic stomachs help to break down the bacteria found in carcasses. Our stomach acid is on par with other scavengers, even more acidic than most carnivores and omnivores. But even prepared with stomach acid and tools, the scavenging lifestyle was dangerous. While bones were less utilized by other animals, they weren't abandoned completely. Hyenas today are limited to Africa, but they were much more widespread in the Pleistocene. Hyenas and hominins were in direct competition for carcasses throughout much of our history, and in most cases it seems the hyenas won. All around the mammoth carcass in southern Spain there are signs of the competing scavengers, broken tools from people, the characteristic bone-white feces of hyenas. But the clearest sign of hominin victory is actually in what is not present. The legs have been removed from the carcass, and so in some cases we won by default, but only some. Often our ancestors weren't so lucky. So how do you change the balance? How do you stop being the one who runs? The answer wouldn't come from the ground. It would come from understanding a threat from an entirely different direction. 27 million years ago, in the forests of ancient England, a nocturnal predator stalks the trees. Its large eyes take advantage of the low light, letting it see the flapping wings of moths collecting on a tree trunk to drink sap spilling on the surface. The moths are unaware they're being hunted, which makes it easy for this ambush predator to slowly sneak up on them. Microcoerus, a tarsier-like primate, uses its dexterous fingers to snatch a moth from the sky. It bites the moth's head clean off, then swallows the rest. It's not a complete meal, but it's a start. But Microcoerus is not the only predator on the Isle of Wight, for as this small primate goes to grab another moth, something strikes from above. It moves silently. An owl. Microcoerus would have neither seen nor heard it coming. Its talons cut short the primate's life as quickly as a moth's. And indeed, this story is written across Microcoerus's bones. The small jaws found in the Head and Hill Formation are etched in acid, showing they spent time in a predator's stomach. The acid primarily affects the teeth, and the jawbones are left unmarked, suggesting it was swallowed whole while the gum line was intact, and the fact that the bone is still intact at all, this suggests it was thrown up after the meat had been digested. All of this evidence points to a singular group of predators. Owls. Well, perhaps less frightening to humans, owls and other birds have been a terrifying predator for primates in the past. Many other early primate bones in Europe and the Americas bear the same acid etching as the ill-fated Microcoerus. In fact, in some ways, we owe a considerable amount of our primate fossil record to the acts of owls. While many birds of prey will produce some sort of pellet of indigestible bones and fur, owls are far more complete because they lack the necessary stomach acid to digest them. Owls often spit up pellets in the same locations, leading to massive accumulations of small mammal bones, including our primate ancestors. But while we have them to thank for our fossil record, other birds are still collecting these bones today, and some are primate specialists. Take the harpy eagle, for example, a meter-long eagle that lives throughout South America. Though it weighs only 9 kilograms, that makes it more than capable of subduing small primates like squirrel monkeys and capuchins. In fact, nearly 50% of their diet is primates. They're also capable of taking down primates closer to their size, like howler monkeys. But a limitation exists for birds. They rarely kill what they cannot carry home to their nest. This means that outweighing a bird by a considerable margin makes you less likely to become prey. As a result, increasing size was an important defense against predatory birds. Yet most primate species, both today and throughout history, have been smaller. Even in hominids, our ancestors were relatively small for a very long time. The first human-sized hominids may have been only 3.5 million years ago, with Australopithecus. For a long time, we were small enough to be fearful of the skies, but of course, just being larger than an eagle does not free you from predators. The evidence lies in a small skull found in South Africa, the Tong child, a young Australopithecus africanus only about 3 years old when they died. Great gouges in and around the eye sockets. Distinct scratches crisscross the forehead and cranium. The preserved marks of very large talons carved into their skull. Even when the adults of a species are too large for a bird to carry, their infants often aren't. Africa 2 million years ago, the Pleistocene savanna. Homo habilis wakes as the sun rises over the grassland. It should be a peaceful morning, but in this world peace is a luxury few can afford. The problem is simple and terrifying. Predators are everywhere. In the water lurks Crocodylus anthropophagus, nearly 8 meters long. The name literally means man-eater. And it's well-deserved. Several Homo habilis specimens from Olduvai Gorge bear distinct crocodile tooth marks in their feet and ankles. Some of these same specimens also have bite marks from leopards. Whether the crocodile or the leopard was the killer versus the scavenger is still undeterminable. But the water is only one danger among many. On the savanna, long-legged hyenas sprint across open ground with terrifying speed. Homo stalks in packs, 200 kilograms of saber-toothed fury with nearly 10-centimeter-long fangs. These scimitar-toothed cats hunted in coordinated groups. And with their speed and teamwork, Homo packs would have certainly been dangerous to hominins if they chose to hunt them. Even the shaded woodlands weren't safe. Under the cover of trees, great ambush predators made their home. The giant short-faced bear, Agriotherium, stalked through the open forest. This bear likely weighed nearly 540 kilograms, nearly twice the size of a Siberian tiger. But despite its massive size, Agriotherium was omnivorous like modern bears. While they likely ate hominins when convenient, they were probably easier to avoid than the many woodland cats of the time. Why fear a bear when the semi-arboreal saber-toothed Dinophalis could stalk you from the treetops, or leopards could hunt you across cliffs? One difficulty in determining the true danger these predators presented is that the evidence of active predation is often the same as scavenging. Even today, many so-called man-eating species are more likely to scavenge corpses than take down living humans. So to find more evidence of these predator-prey relationships, scientists look at the chemical makeup of the bones themselves. In particular, they record nitrogen isotopes. There's an isotope called nitrogen-15 that gets concentrated at higher and higher trophic levels. The more carnivorous an animal's diet, the more nitrogen-15 in its teeth. Those predators that ate other carnivores and omnivores would have an even denser concentration. The moderate level of nitrogen-15 in Homo suggests its diet was primarily herbivores, like mammoths. However, the high level of nitrogen in Dinophalis is consistent with eating omnivores, like the early hominin Paranthropus. As a result, we can tell where hominins fell in the food chain even when bite marks weren't preserved, and the answer is clear: we were prey. Specialized prey for specialized predators. The challenge wasn't just surviving one predator, it was surviving all of them. Different hunters, different strategies, different habitats. There was no single adaptation that could save you. Avoid the water, and Dinophalis waits in the trees. Climb to escape the cats, and the eagles strike. Stay in open ground to spot the leopards, and Homo runs you down. Our ancestors lived in a world designed to kill them, and for 2 million years it succeeded more often than it failed. So what changed? Fire. 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus sits beside a fire. The flames crackle and pop. Sparks rise into the night sky. Around them, the darkness is held at bay, pushed back by light and heat. Fire may have been mastered early. Archaeologists still hotly debate the timing. Some think it happened nearly 1.5 million years ago in Homo erectus, lining up with a marked brain size expansion as a result of cooked food. Others push it back further. Others think it came much later. But one thing is certain: controlled fire was a game changer. Natural fires occur, of course. Lightning strikes, dry brush ignites, and embers can be carried, transported from one camp to another. But controlled fire, fire that you can start, maintain, and use at will, that's something entirely different. The direct benefit is immediate and life-saving: protection at night. Most predators avoid fire. The flames, the smoke, the heat, it triggers an instinctive fear deep in their brains. Homo erectus could sleep without posting guards. They could rest without constantly wondering if hyenas were circling in the dark. But fire offered more than just direct protection from nocturnal predators. Burnt landscapes fundamentally change predator behavior. When fire sweeps through grassland, it creates open spaces, and in open spaces, predators become visible from a distance. Lions can't ambush what they can't hide from. Leopards avoid open clearings. Even Homo, fast as it was, preferred some cover for its coordinated hunts, and so hominins learned to use fire not just as a defensive tool, but as a landscape architect. Burn the grass, clear the brush, make the predators visible long before they can get close. Then came the cooking revolution, and this changed everything about human biology. Cooked food is dramatically easier to digest. It takes far less time to chew, and it provides significantly more calories per bite than raw food. Raw meat is tough, fibrous, difficult for human teeth to process efficiently. Cooked meat, tender, easy to consume, energy-dense. The same principle applies to tubers, roots, and vegetables. Cooking breaks down tough cellulose and makes nutrients accessible that would otherwise pass through the digestive system unused. What once required hours of laborious chewing and lengthy fermentation now takes mere minutes, and this efficiency had a profound effect on our biology and evolution. With more calories available and dramatically less time spent eating and digesting, Homo erectus could invest energy elsewhere. In bigger, more complex brains, in sophisticated social structures, in elaborate tool-making and planning. The expansion of the human brain coincides almost perfectly with the mastery of fire. Coincidence? Almost certainly not. But here's the critical thing that's often misunderstood. Fire wasn't a weapon. It couldn't turn us into hunters. It couldn't make us predators. Picture this scene playing out across Africa. Homo erectus, gathered around a fire as night falls. Here's the familiar laughter in the distance. Pachycrocuta, the giant hyena. It circles the camp slowly, methodically, just beyond the reach of the firelight. One of the Homo erectus grabs a burning branch and waves it aggressively at the darkness. The hyena backs off a few steps, but it doesn't leave. It just waits, patient, persistent. And everyone around that fire knows what will happen. When the fire dies down, when the embers cool to ash, the hyena will move closer. Fire could hold predators at a distance. It could buy time. But it couldn't transform hominins from prey into hunters. What fire did was buy time. Time to think, time to plan, time to innovate. And that next step, that would require a true weapon. Today, in the forests of Fongoli, Senegal, a chimpanzee hunts. But it's not using its hands or its teeth. It's using a tool, a weapon it made itself. The chimpanzee carefully selects a suitable branch. It strips away the leaves methodically with its teeth. It sharpens one end, scraping it against rough bark until it forms a crude but effective point. Then it approaches a tree with visible hollows. Inside one of those hollows, a bush baby sleeps, a galago, small, nocturnal, completely vulnerable during the daylight hours. The chimpanzee can't see it directly, but it knows from experience that it's there. It thrusts the makeshift spear into the hollow, blindly, again, adjusting the angle with each attempt. When it finally pulls the spear out, there's blood on the tip. Success. The bush baby is extracted and consumed. This isn't a one-time event or a fluke. Chimpanzees in Fongoli have been observed making and using spears to hunt galagos repeatedly, systematically. It's a learned behavior passed down through generations from mother to offspring, and it proves something critically important. Primates can be tool-using hunters. We're not unique in this capability. In Gombe, a different population of chimpanzees hunts red colobus monkeys. These aren't tiny bush babies. They're much larger, faster, more alert, and they fight back aggressively. The colobus monkeys mob the chimpanzees, screaming and threatening, trying desperately to scare them off. But the chimpanzees don't scare easily. They hunt in coordinated groups of 10 or more individuals. They communicate, they plan, they chase the monkeys into the trees and systematically cut off escape routes. And when they finally catch one, they don't kill it cleanly or mercifully. They dismember it with their hands and teeth. They pull it apart while it's still alive and screaming. Red colobus monkeys are so prized by these chimpanzees that they've hunted them nearly to local extinction through relentless overhunting. So the tools may be primitive by modern standards, but they are devastatingly powerful. And these ingenious spears were almost certainly made and used by early hominin hunters as well, probably much earlier than we can definitively prove. Of course, wood doesn't preserve well in the archaeological record. It rots, it decays, it disappears. But still, the earliest confirmed weapons we've found are wooden spears. They come from a peat bog in Germany called Schöningen. The preserved spears are around 2 meters long and carefully sharpened, noticeably better crafted than the crude spears made by modern chimpanzees. Both ends are sharpened to deadly points, and they appear to have been precisely scraped and shaped with flint tools instead of just teeth. Though the spear makers themselves haven't been definitively identified, they may have been Homo heidelbergensis, or possibly early Neanderthals. Regardless of the specific maker, these spears represent only the tip of a much larger hunting revolution. After all, meat provided our ancestors with massive amounts of calories in far less time than gathering plant foods, giving them dramatically more free time to focus on creating new and better weapons, developing complex social structures, and caring for their increasingly helpless infants with their growing brains. Over evolutionary time, our bodies adapted to become even better at hunting. Our shoulders have fundamentally adapted for throwing spears with force and accuracy. Our jaws became progressively smaller and weaker from cooking, and our hunting technology continued to improve. In North America, people began hunting with large fluted spear tips known as Clovis points. These sophisticated stone tools may have helped them hunt enormous animals like mammoths. We became hunters biologically, not just behaviorally. 13,000 years ago, North America. A group of skilled hunters moves deliberately across the landscape. In their hands they carry spears tipped with Clovis points, large, beautifully crafted fluted stone blades designed for one specific purpose, efficiently killing megafauna. Ahead of them in the distance, a massive mammoth grazes peacefully. Enormous, powerful, dangerous, and, critically, in its absolute prime, not old, not sick, not weak. This is not a desperate scavenging operation. This is not opportunistic feeding on another predator's kill. This is a carefully planned, coordinated hunt. The hunters spread out strategically across the landscape. They communicate with subtle hand signals. They move with the precision and confidence born from extensive experience and generational knowledge. When they finally strike, it's not at the vulnerable or the elderly. It's deliberately at the healthy, at the strong, at the prime adults with the most abundant fat reserves, because fat is concentrated energy, and energy is survival, and survival means your children live to have children of their own. In South America, the same revolutionary story plays out with different tools and different prey. Fishtail points instead of Clovis points, giant ground sloths instead of mammoths, but the underlying principle remains exactly the same. Hunt the prime adults. Take what other predators cannot or will not. This marks a fundamental revolutionary shift in the food chain. Most predators throughout evolutionary history have focused almost exclusively on the vulnerable, the very young, the sick, the elderly, the injured. These are easier targets with far less risk of injury or death to the hunter. But humans don't play by those ancient rules anymore. We hunt the most difficult prey specifically because the payoff is dramatically worth the increased risk. More fat, more meat, more calories per dangerous kill, and the isotope evidence definitively confirms this dramatic shift. Nitrogen-15 levels in human bones from this period begin to rise significantly. We're not just eating herbivores anymore like other predators, we're eating other apex carnivores, bears, wolves, other top predators. We've reached the absolute top of the food chain. We're no longer prey, we're no longer scavengers, we're apex predators. But reaching the top of the ancient food chain has profound and permanent consequences. As the last ice age finally ends and the climate warms, megafauna across the entire world begin to disappear at an alarming rate. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, dire wolves, all gone within a geological instant. The scientific debate still rages intensely: climate change or hunting pressure, or both. The answer is almost certainly both factors working in devastating combination. The climate warmed rapidly, habitats shifted dramatically, food sources changed. But intensive hunting by increasingly skilled humans didn't help these struggling populations. Humans had become terrifyingly efficient killers, too efficient. And without the natural restraint that comes from being prey ourselves, from being hunted and killed regularly, we hunted without inherent limits or fear. Then came the agricultural revolution, and everything changed forever. 10,000 years ago, humans began systematically domesticating animals: sheep, goats, cattle, pigs. We selectively bred them over generations for docility, for increased size, for superior meat production. We no longer needed to hunt dangerous wild animals to survive. We could farm safe, predictable ones. We also began intensively cultivating plants: wheat, rice, corn. We aggressively modified the landscape to suit our specific needs. Ancient forests were systematically cleared, vital wetlands were drained, vast grasslands were ploughed under, and in doing so we didn't just climb to the top of the food chain. We fundamentally rewrote it. We changed the rules entirely. We don't just sit passively at the top of the ancient food chain, we've completely rewritten it to serve us. Today, right now, in the Sundarbans mangrove forests between India and Bangladesh, tigers still kill 50 to 60 people every single year. We could eliminate them entirely. We have the technology, the firepower, the organizational infrastructure. It would be relatively easy, but we don't. Instead, we protect them. We create dedicated reserves. We strictly limit human encroachment into their territory. We prosecute poachers who kill them. Why? Because we've moved far beyond mere survival. We're no longer desperate prey running terrified from predators. We're stewards managing entire ecosystems. In Ethiopia, spotted hyenas regularly wander onto airport runways. They interfere with commercial planes. They're a genuine nuisance, a real danger to aviation safety. The solution? Careful relocation, not extermination. The predators that once hunted us relentlessly, that ate our ancestors for millions of years, are now merely inconveniences. Problems to be thoughtfully managed, not existential threats to be feared and destroyed. It's deeply ironic when you think about it. For 2 million years we were prey. We cowered in dark caves. We ran desperately from hyenas. We hid from eagles circling overhead. We scavenged pathetic bone fragments that true predators left behind. And now, we calmly decide whether those same predators live or die. We control their fate entirely. But how fast did we actually climb this food chain? Let's put it in proper perspective. 2 million years spent as vulnerable prey, running, hiding, scavenging desperately, living in constant fear. 400,000 years with increasingly complex tools, with controlled fire, with cooking, with basic weapons. Only 40,000 years to achieve true, unchallenged dominance, to develop agriculture, to master domestication. In geological terms, that's less than a blink. In evolutionary terms, it's almost miraculous. But this meteoric rise came at an enormous cost that we rarely acknowledge. How many of our direct ancestors were violently eaten by predators? Millions. Tens of millions. Possibly hundreds of millions over the millennia. Every single biological adaptation we possess, our unusually acidic stomach acid, our uniquely structured shoulder joints, our remarkable ability to throw objects with lethal accuracy, is a direct evolutionary response to relentless predation. Fire didn't magically make us safe. It bought us precious time. Crude spears didn't instantly make us apex predators. They slowly leveled an impossibly uneven playing field. Agriculture didn't free us from the food chain. It gave us unprecedented control over it. And here's the profound lesson we keep carelessly forgetting. We are still part of that ancient food chain. We're just occupying a radically different position within it now. Remember young John Wade, the 9-year-old boy in Victorian London who innocently reached out to pet a caged tiger? He almost died violently. Even in 1850, in the very heart of a modern, civilized city, a tiger brutally reminded him that we are not truly invincible. We forget our fundamental vulnerability. We foolishly assume complete safety. We treat dangerous predators like harmless curiosities instead of the lethal threats they actually remain. But the Sundarban's tigers haven't forgotten what we are. The Nile crocodiles in Africa haven't forgotten. They still instinctively see us as potential prey whenever the opportunity arises. We've moved dramatically up the food chain, but we absolutely haven't left it behind. And with our new dominant position comes a new and profound responsibility. The predators that once hunted our ancestors now depend entirely on us for their continued survival. We control their remaining habitats. We control their available prey. We control their futures. We protect tigers not because they're somehow harmless now, but because we can afford to be merciful. We carefully relocate hyenas not because they're not still dangerous, but because we have the power to do so. That's the ultimate irony. The creatures that terrified our ancestors for millions of years now exist at our complete mercy. And perhaps that's the final, most important lesson of Zhoukoudian. That cave in China, where 40 Homo erectus individuals were scattered across the floor, their fragmentary bones still lie there today, marked by hyena teeth, a permanent monument to our ancient vulnerability. We were prey. We were absolutely not always gods. And maybe remembering that uncomfortable truth is the most important thing we can possibly do. If you enjoyed this journey, like and subscribe. Comment: what predator scares you most? We didn't conquer the food chain through raw strength. We conquered it through ingenuity, cooperation, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The caves still echo with the laughter of ancient hyenas. The bones still bear their marks, but we're still here. And that's the real victory.